Warning. Warning. Surface collision imminent.
Many attractions looking into the future and see some of the ways electric energy serves mankind now and tomorrow. Inside Tomorrowland and the Grand Prix Raceway, you're riding aboard a brand new concept in electric transportation. First to use electric linear induction motors. There are no moving parts in these three.
It wouldn't be the right kind of offhand Disney video if I didn't mention the PeopleMover at least once or 5 times throughout the course of telling you about another attraction that's completely separate, completely unattached to the PeopleMover. Or so you think. This video is not about how Disney needs to bring back the Disneyland PeopleMover, believe it or not. Although they do need to do that somehow, some way. Rebuild it, bring it back, I don't care, we need a PeopleMover at Disneyland. In fact, this video is more about the PeopleMover as it exists today at Walt Disney World, the only operating PeopleMover in the world at a Disney theme park. Now, it takes more than just magic and a bunch of tires to make this puppy go around and around Tomorrowland from open to close every day unless it breaks down and move people throughout the park. It takes linear induction motors. And we'll talk about linear induction motors in a second because it's a very sciencey thing and I'm not in a big sciencey mood right now. Maybe in 3 to 5 minutes we can hang. Now, the PeopleMover is the best ride at the Magic Kingdom. Maybe a top 2 best rides at Walt Disney World. You gotta remember, Living with the Land still exists, and at Disneyland it hasn't been around for a very long time. We're not here to mourn the death of the Disneyland PeopleMover though. Instead, today we are here to look at the history of both the Walt Disney World and Disneyland PeopleMover systems and the sort of weird quasi-company that was started by Walt Disney himself in order to make the more widespread adoption of PeopleMovers rather than subways or bus systems the way of the future, specifically for Progress City, Epcot. Today, my friends, we're talking about why the PeopleMover at Disney World has such a weird name. We're talking about Wedway. Now see, the story of Wedway begins all the way back in 1964 at the, you guessed it, where a lot of things at Disney parks began, the World's Fair in New York. This fair saw the opening of the Carousel of Progress, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, It's a Small World, Ford's Magic Skyway. Walt was heavily invested in building attractions for the park, and maybe after the fair was over, he could move those attractions to Disneyland, so he wouldn't have to pay for them out of his pocket. The main pavilion we're going to be looking at today is the Ford Pavilion with Ford's Magic Skyway, sort of a precursor to a scene in the Disneyland Railroad and World of Motion, I guess therefore Test Track, the Haunted Mansion, and a PeopleMover all at the same time. Now, as you can see from these pictures, it's sort of an Omnimover, sort of a PeopleMover style ride vehicle, and the ride vehicle itself is a Ford Mustang. People wanted to ride in the brand new Ford Mustang. And the whole idea with this sort of ride system was that you were riding these brand new Ford cars right off of the assembly line into the future. Well, first into the past, but then into the future. Narrated by Walt Disney himself, guests would first pass through a scene depicting dinosaurs, sauropods that may look very familiar to you if you're an avid rider on the Disneyland Railroad. Yes, these are the same guys. These guys made their way to Anaheim. In fact, many of the figures and maquettes from the dinosaur scene of Ford's Magic Skyway were either copied very closely or just altogether moved to the Disneyland Railroad, and they're still there today. Guests would ride past cavemen, similar to Spaceship Earth. They would learn about the history of locomotion, similar to World of Motion and Test Track 3, maybe, before making our way into the future. Ford's Magic Skyway was a fun dark ride, a slow-moving dark ride through the history of the world. But what Walt was interested in, other than the dinosaurs, because he needed that diorama at the Disneyland Railroad, was the ride system. The conveyor belt-like ride system for the Skyway proved to be very high capacity, and it's something he wanted to look into when building new attractions for Disneyland, specifically in Tomorrowland, and there were 2 main attractions that utilized this sort of similar system. the conveyor belt system was refined into a sort of pivoting version of itself, where the ride vehicle could rotate as well as go up and down on the conveyor belt tracks, allowing Disney to redirect guests' attention at certain show scenes. That would then go on to become known as the Omnimover, used in Adventures Through Inner Space, and of course later, Dune Buggies in the Haunted Mansion. Adventure Through Inner Space opened in August of 1967, but a few months before that, in July of 67, the Disneyland PeopleMover opened for the first time and was way closer to what the original Skyway was at the World's Fair. The PeopleMover, unlike the Omnimover, didn't pivot toward any specific show scenes because there weren't really any show scenes. You were meant to relax and take in the view of the park around you, a full 360-degree view, so pivoting wasn't needed, so it more closely resembled Ford's Magic Skyway rather than Adventure Through Inner Space. But with Walt gone and Walt Disney World beginning development, Roy decided to take Disney World's Tomorrowland a step beyond Disneyland's, and shine even more of a spotlight on futuristic or even emerging technologies, with If You Had Wings, with air travel becoming more and more commonplace as more and more people were able to afford flying on airplanes, or the new Wed PeopleMover for Tomorrowland. This is Disneyland's PeopleMover cranked up to 11. 12, dare I say. Now, if you look at posters or photos or even videos of old ride-throughs on Disneyland's PeopleMover, it's very hard to miss the fact that the ride was sponsored by Goodyear. That's because the PeopleMover cars were propelled forward on the track by Goodyear tires. Again, very similar to Ford's Magic Skyway. However, the Magic Kingdom PeopleMover did things a little bit differently. Ah yes, the linear induction motors I promised to talk about earlier in the video. See, linear induction is not the same as just a regular motor that spins a wheel. That's how the Disneyland PeopleMover moved. The linear induction motors are a bit more high-tech. They're a bit more futuristic, a bit more Tomorrowland-y. Honestly, it's a apt description. How does it happen? How does it work? Well, just think magnets. That's basically what it is. Magnets make PeopleMover go sometimes fast, sometimes slow. Wait a second, that was great. If you look down at the track while you're riding the PeopleMover, you may see these sort of dark metal plates in the middle. When the PeopleMover speeds up during your rotation around Tomorrowland, you'll notice that there are a large concentration of these plates very close together, and when you're going at a regular standard speed, they're spaced out evenly. These house the electromagnets, and there are 629 of them along the PeopleMover track, and with a sequence of pulses, the magnets will pull and then sometimes push, if it gets going really fast, the PeopleMover ride vehicle down the track. And I feel like, I mean, I've never been on it, but I would feel that the linear induction motors used on the Walt Disney World version of the PeopleMover would make for a lot smoother of a ride than the Disneyland PeopleMover. And because the Magic Kingdom PeopleMover is powered by what is essentially a bunch of electromagnets, it doesn't emit any pollution like the Autopia or Tomorrowland Speedway cars do, because it's all just electrical power. And all of this stemmed from Walt Disney's original vision for Epcot, or Progress City, where PeopleMovers would take people from their homes on the outskirts of the city to their jobs near the city center. The PeopleMover would never stop, it would just slow down and you'd get off at your station. And even though Walt was gone, maybe the world did still deep down want some sort of Progress City or some futuristic technology somewhere. And so in 1974, Walt Disney Productions, nowadays just known as the Walt Disney Company, founded a new division called Community Transportation Services. In response to, quote, numerous requests from cities, airports, and shopping centers interested in the applications of the company's monorail and Wed PeopleMover systems. Monorails and PeopleMovers, they weren't just meant to be confined to within Disney theme parks. It wasn't supposed to take you from the Polynesian to the Magic Kingdom. It was supposed to do that, but it was also supposed to take you from your home to your job, or from your job to the park, or from the park to a shopping center? Lunch, maybe? If tech companies and transportation companies didn't want to build PeopleMovers and monorails to take people places, Disney would take the matter into their own hands. The new Community Transportation Services branch of the company would, quote, consult in the master planning of new short-range intra-city mass transportation systems, license Disney-developed systems for these applications, and administer their construction and installation. You could have a Disney World PeopleMover right in your very own city. That, to me, sounds pretty awesome. I'm sorry, I want a PeopleMover, sue me. More specifically, I want a Disneyland people mover, just some sort of people mover within Disneyland. I feel like that'd be really, really cool. By the time 1982 had rolled around, Epcot Center was open to the public, and with it, an extension of the monorail line from the TTC, or Transportation Ticket Center, or Ticket Transportation Center, depending on who you ask, to the brand new world-class theme park. It still is world-class. It's the best dang park in Orlando. But along with the opening of Epcot, Disney Community Transportation Services decided that that name didn't really roll off the tongue very well. It sounded very robotic, not very Disney, and so the name was changed to Wed Transportation Systems Inc. Wed from the initials of Walter Elias Disney, and Transportation Systems because they're still selling transportation systems, or trying to at this point. They hadn't had much luck. That's not to say that they didn't have any luck so far, though. They did manage to sell one people mover. Just one to the Houston International Airport. That's right, my friends. If you ever find yourself in Houston International Airport and you find yourself riding the subway, just know that that's not a subway, that's a Wedway. I mean, a people mover. That's a people. You're riding a people mover built by Disney for the Houston airport. Actually, I'll find myself there in a few months. Maybe I should have held off on making this video so I could show you footage, but there's photos. Those photos suffice, right? The system at the Houston airport uses the same linear motors that are used in Tomorrowland at the Magic Kingdom. The only difference is the cars look a little different, and of course the track layout is different. And the cars also come to a full and complete stop, making everything a little bit longer. I mean, come on, just have a move real slow instead of stopping, and then have an employee standing there telling you to watch your step as you board, please. I mean, they do it at the Magic Kingdom. They can't do it at the airport. But if you're interested in learning more about Houston's people mover specifically, I highly recommend checking out Technology Connections video from 6 years ago that goes into really deep detail about this. Now, while the Houston Airport people mover isn't as flashy or maybe even as fun as the Disneyland or Walt Disney World people movers, it certainly is the most realistic use of a people mover. It's not to get wonderful views of Tomorrowland or to learn about attractions. The subway is meant to get people from one place to another, to move them. It's the most practical use of a Disney people mover we've ever seen. And I think there's a reason as to why these two people movers have survived as long as they have, and this one has gone the way of the dodo. It's gone forever, and unless Disney, for some reason, decides they want to open up a new version of the people mover at Disneyland, it's because of the motors. It's because there's little to no moving parts for the people movers. The wheels on the underside, and then the articulated joints, I believe, between the cars of the people mover. That's all that would really ever need replacing, and the doors. But other than that, it just keeps going on its own. The motors are embedded into the ground. They're electrically powered. As long as they're getting that electrical current, the people mover is gonna move people. Meanwhile, at Disneyland, with the tires and the inclines, a lot of the parts would need replacing over the years. You'd need to have constant maintenance on the people mover because, like Disney World, it never really stopped. But that might not have been a good thing in this situation. So perhaps, maybe, we can blame the downfall of the Disneyland people mover on Goodyear, the ones who sponsored it all those years ago. Because when Goodyear would drop their sponsorship in 1981, Disney couldn't just very well replace all of the tires with linear motors like at the Magic Kingdom because the inclines. It wouldn't really make sense, and it probably wouldn't be as reliable as the Magic Kingdoms. The motors might not have been as reliable as they are in Orlando, so instead of changing the ride system, they closed the ride down entirely and replaced it with the rocket rods, which only did further damage to the actual structural support of the people mover track, and now we have the sad sight that we see today when we venture into Tomorrowland. They could, if they wanted to, build a new one. There's always that possibility. Anyway, just really briefly back to the Houston people mover. If you look at it in this footage, it seems, I don't know, very out of date, a little bit creepy. And while, yes, people do use the subway, there's not as much of a reason to use it as there is to use the SkyTram or other trains that take guests around the airport. I wouldn't go as far to say that it's a novelty and that only really, Disney fans will make their pilgrimage to George Bush Airport to ride the third Disney people mover. It really, sadly, isn't really as effective at moving people as the other forms of transportation around the airport are. I'm not saying this thing is going to go the way of the Rivers of America at the Magic Kingdom. What I am saying is that if you want to see the third Disney people mover, I'd make my way to Houston relatively soon if I were you, within the next couple of years, because I don't think there's that much of a reason for them to keep this around for another 10, 20 years even. But now let's get back to Wed Transportation Systems Inc. Whatever happened to that weird subsidiary of the Walt Disney Company that was specializing in building people movers, and by specializing I mean built one other people mover for an outside contractor at one point in time? Whatever happened to them? Well, as we know, the Wedway People Mover opened at the Magic Kingdom in 1975. The subway at the Houston International Airport would open later in 1981. And they may or may not have built one underneath the Capitol building in DC. It's kind of vague. But as the years went by, it seemed less and less people wanted to invest in the Wedway People Mover system. There were other forms of transportation that could get the job done, one, for cheaper, or two, run outdoors in cold or bad weather. The Wedway People Mover was not able to do that. And of course, who could forget the inclines? But it seems like Disney didn't really give up on this for a number of years until 1987, when it seems that nobody really wanted a monorail or a people mover for their city or for their airport or for their community. And so Disney filed a certificate of withdrawal on the 20th of July, 1987, and Wed Transportation Systems Inc. was no more. And with that, Wed Transportation Systems and Wedway became a thing of the past. So much so, in 1994, when Tomorrowland was undergoing a transformation, the People Mover included, the name was changed from the Wedway People Mover, as it had been known from opening day of the attraction, to the Tomorrowland Transit Authority People Mover, which is how it's known today. Most likely because Disney wasn't in the business of selling people movers anymore, they just wanted you to ride through the city of the future. And who was in charge of the People Mover? Of course, that would be the authority of the transit in Tomorrowland, the city of the future, the TTA. And the story of the ride was updated to make it seem like you were going on the Grand Circle Tour line of the People Mover. The blue line, which is the one that we ride in the Magic Kingdom, takes you around Tomorrowland, eventually returning to its original station. There are also a red line, which is a sort of interplanetary People Mover. I don't know how fast that thing goes, but it must be going really fast. Those motors are working overtime on the red line. And the green line takes you to the outskirts of Tomorrowland, to the hoverburbs, where people live, play, etc. Now, I do understand the labeling of the ride as the Tomorrowland Transit Authority People Mover. It adds to the lore of Disney World's Tomorrowland, which is much better than Disneyland's. It's a fully functioning city of the future. You have the launch depot, formerly the Light and Power Company. There are robots going to work and salons on the People Mover. It feels like a real operating city of the future that's opened up for us to visit during our brief time at the Magic Kingdom. But I do think that little bit of theming is lost on a lot of people. If Disney wanted to just rename it the People Mover or just People Mover, a lot of people wouldn't bat an eye. But me, personally, I think it's a really neat nod to the history of the People Mover, not just at Disneyland or at Houston for that matter, but of this whole sort of idea that Disney had to put a People Mover in every city in the United States to make it easier for people to get places. An idea that went all the way back to Walt Disney's original plan for Epcot, and one that survived nearly 21 years after his death with the official closure of Wed Transportation Systems Inc. It's a really interesting peek back behind the curtain, back into a time when Disney wasn't necessarily just an entertainment company, they were also a tech company. And they're still sort of trying to be a tech company today, but they're not pitching people movers or monorails to cities. They're, making meet and greets more immersive, which is neat. Believe me, it's cool. It's just not quite the same thing. It feels like they're trying to do more for society back then. Maybe that's too much. Maybe that's going too far. Maybe my need for a local people mover has blinded me. But my friends, that's not to say that there aren't remnants, if you know where to find them, of the old Wed way of doing things, of the old Wed transportation systems. Because there are. Like every division of a company, Wed Transportation Systems had to have their own unique logo. And this was it. You can find it on the front and the back of the People Mover pitch pamphlet. Try saying that 10 times fast. And that symbol still exists within a Disney park to this very day. Next time you're disembarking the People Mover at the Magic Kingdom and going down the ramp, keep a lookout for the sign in the middle of the walkway, the escalators, the one that gives the attraction specifications on the front. However, on the back, it seems blank until you look a little closer, and my friends, there it is, the old Wedway logo. There, still around to this day. Whoever at Imagineering decided to put that logo on the back of that sign in Tomorrowland, you, my friend, have nothing but my utmost respect. That's like the most respectful Disney has been to its company history in a very long time. It's not something the average person would look at twice, but us, now that you've watched this video, know the importance of this simple symbol. And I hope you recognize it next time you leave the People Mover at the Magic Kingdom as not just a piece of People Mover history, but as a piece of American history, transportation history, of a project that was envisioned by one man half a century ago that was carried on after his death. And although after a while it seemingly failed, I think we can all say that we've had a bit of fun experiencing what is left of it. From riding through Space Mountain entirely in the dark, or getting to your gate at the airport, the Wedway People Mover, while not adopted for mass transit, still exists and is still the best ride at the Magic Kingdom. And I will die on that hill. And then if they wanted to bring it back somehow at Disneyland, maybe we could get some LIMs, some linear induction motors embedded in the track there, make it a bit less bumpy. You'd have to fix the whole deal with the inclines, but that's just a thought though. That's just me ruminating. If they decide to bring it back at Disneyland, they always could, if they wanted to, if they really, really wanted to. Hey there, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching this video about the Wedway People Mover and Transportation Systems. I thought it was a really interesting deep dive into the potential alternate history where people movers became widespread, commonly accepted forms of transportation. Alas, we are not in that future. Everyone get back in your cars and hop on the highway. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button if you're new around here and you want more videos that are like this one. And the names that you see scrolling by on your screen right now are the names of all of my wonderful supporters over at patreon.com/offhanddisney. For even just $1 a month, you can join their ranks and get early access to videos and exclusive access to other videos. Like I said, the link will be down in the description below. It's just $1. However, if you'd rather follow me for free on another social media site, you absolutely can on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Blue Sky at Offhand Disney. It's Offhand Disney. It just makes it a little easier for you to find me no matter where I am. Who knows, maybe someday Disney will reopen the Transportation Systems Inc. branch of the company and people movers will become commonplace in all of our cities and we'll have fun, elevated views of our city as we travel from the store to our house or from our house to our job. But what's more likely to happen is they'll just release a couple dozen more Encanto and Frozen movies and call it a day. So that's where we are now with the Disney company. Thank you all so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Goodbye.